Hey, good afternoon. What's happening, everybody? What's happening? It's your girl Tiffany coming through here live in effect. So today I want to get into the topic about Black history, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a trip to the Harlem Renaissance. All right. So I'm quite sure people know about the Harlem Renaissance history. The word Renaissance, which is a French word that means the rebirth. So it was the rebirth of Harlem during the time from the 20s all the way up to the 60s. Okay. So during that time period, you had a lot of African Americans that was migrating from the South into the North. And as they migrated to the North, they brought a lot of talents with them. Some of them was artists, some of them were poets, some of them were authors, people were novelists. There were so many things. Musicians, they brought all the gifts they had. You talking about Duke Ellington, you talking about Zora Neale Hurston, Langston Hughes, who was actually from Missouri. And then this individual that I'm getting ready to go into today, his name is Wallace Thurman. Wallace Thurman was one of those individuals who was very prominent during the time of the Harlem Renaissance. Okay. And he also had a little group called the Niggerati, which means nigger and Literati. Literati deals with somebody who's very intellectual, who's very literate, educated, etc. Okay. So he came up with that terminology. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into his history and his background. And also I'm going to present some books that people can check out. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so as you can see, this is a picture of Wallace Thurman. Did I say Truman or Thurman? Excuse me, Wallace Thurman. All right, so that's a picture of him. Very nice looking young man. Very attractive young man. But who was Wallace Thurman? So Wallace Henry Thurman was born on August 16th of 1902, and he died December 22nd, 1934. He was an American novelist active during the Harlem Renaissance. He also wrote essays, worked as an editor, and was a publisher of short-lived newspapers and literary journals. He is best known for his novel, The Blacker the Berry, a novel of Negro life, which explores discrimination within the Black community based on skin color, with lighter skin being more highly valued. Let's start right there. Blacker the berry, sweeter the juice. Where we heard that line from? We heard that line from Tupac Shakur's song, Keep Your Head Up. When he started off in the beginning, he said, blacker the berry, sweeter the juice. I give honor to my sister that's on welfare. If nobody else love you, Tupac, I forgot the other line to the song, but you get it. Okay, but he starts off with that beginning. So listening to that lyrics and going back, now we know where that terminology come from. Okay, so the book is based on the story about the whole colorism within the Black community, light skin versus dark skin, without what I would like to call internalized racism, because that's what it is, internalized racism. But this ain't something that just started. It's been going on for decades. Even those in the continent, there was some form of discrimination. When the Berbers took over, right, during the trans-Saharan slave trade, they referred their slaves as Sudan, which means black. So, and they were very discriminated towards dark-skinned Africans in the continent. So if you look up the trans-Saharan slave trade, not transatlantic slave trade, but trans-Saharan slave trade, you will see that there was some form of discrimination then. But the thing is, they didn't see themselves as being black. That was the thing. They didn't see themselves as being black. It was a tribal thing. So the concept of black and white as we know it, as a social construct, it wasn't very prevalent then. It was more so the tribe and class. That's what it was more about. The tribe that you belong to and the caste system. So the caste system is what brought about the factors. So, but there was always some form of discrimination, against those who was of a darker complexion. But yes, as we know it today, and still to this day, which is very ironic to me that I happen to see the brothers going back and forth with each other about, I think it was on Pseudo Killers, I believe. They are arguing about the term black. Who is black? What is black? Like, we're still arguing about that. Because I'm going to say this. Black people, we're very diverse. Okay, we're very diversified. We're not just, based on skin tone, but the regions that we come from. Because you'll see that the continental Africans themselves, they weren't just dark-skinned people. Like, we create the narrative. Like you guys walking around here talking about Negro, Egyptian, and all that. They weren't just dark-skinned people, okay? You had people that were my complexion, lighter. It was a different color background. People that what you would call red bone, as we say in the South, red bone means very, 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 very light skin. So it's diversity. Once we understand the diversity of our people, then start making more sense. But we don't understand diversity very well. So we got caught up on the light skin versus dark skin thing. Now we asking who is black, who ain't black. Well, I'm going to say this. If it wasn't for the Africans, you wouldn't be black. Black people would not be black if it wasn't for the Africans. What do I mean by that? That means if it wasn't for the people that came from the continent, I was brought here to America against their own will, and they had to build a country for those invaders, for those oppressors, and they were being labeled as Negro. Although they were from different tribes, different background, different countries, they was bunched up together and they was labeled as Negroes, okay, and niggers. If it wasn't for them being here, working as hard as they did, there wouldn't be no black folks, all right? There will be no us. So if you saying that the people in Africa or in the continent are not black, then your ass ain't black either. You know what I'm saying? So that's just where I stand on my position with that. But let me go ahead and continue. All right. Anyways, so Thurman was born in Salt Lake City to Beulah and Oscar Thurman. When Thurman was less than a month old, his father abandoned his wife and son. It was not until Wallace was 30 years old that he met his father. Between his mother's many marriages, Wallace and his mother lived in Salt Lake City with Emma Jackson, his maternal grandmother. Jackson ran a saloon from her home, selling alcohol without a license. And a saloon is like a bar. Okay. So Thurman's early life was marked by loneliness, family instability, and illness. He began grade school at age 6 in Boise, Idaho, but his poor health eventually led to a 2-year absence from school, during which he returned to his grandmother Emma in Salt Lake City. From 1910 to 1914, Thurman lived in Chicago, moving with his mother. He finished grammar school in Omaha, Nebraska. During this time, he suffered from persistent heart attacks. While living in Pasadena, California in the winter of 1918, Thurman caught influenza during the worldwide influenza pandemic. He recovered and returned to Salt Lake City, where he finished high school. Thurman was a voracious reader. He was a voracious leader. Sorry about that. He enjoyed the works of Plato, Aristotle, Shakespeare, Havelock Ellis, Flaubert, Charles Baudelaire, and many others. He wrote his first novel at the age of 10. He attended the University of Utah from 1919 to 1920 as a pre-medical student. In 1922, he transferred to the University of Southern California in Los Angeles, but left without earning a degree. While in Los Angeles, he met and befriended the writer Arna Bontemps, and became a reporter and columnist for a Black-owned newspaper. He started a magazine outlet intended to be a West Coast equivalent to the Crisis operated by the NAACP. All right, so let's look down at his career. In 1925, Thurman moved to Harlem. During the next decade, he worked as a ghostwriter, a publisher, and editor, as well as writing novels, plays, and articles. In 1926, he became the editor of The Messenger, a socialist journal addressed to Blacks. There, he was the first to publish the adult themed stories of Langston Hughes. Thurman left the journal in October of 1926 to become the editor of World Tomorrow, which was owned by whites. The following month, he collaborated in founding the literary magazine Fire, devoted to the younger Negro artists. Among its contributors were Hughes, Zora Neale Hurston, Richard Bruce Nugent, Aaron Douglas, and Gwendolyn B. Bennett. Okay. He was able to publish only one issue of Fire. It challenged such figures as W.E.B. Du Bois and African Americans who had been working for social equality and racial integration. Thurman criticized them for believing that Black art should serve as propaganda for those ends. He said that the new Negro movement spent too much energy trying to show white Americans that Black were respectable and not inferior. All right. Thurman and others of the Niggerati wanted to show the lives of African Americans, both the good and the bad. Thurman believed that Black artists should fully acknowledge and celebrate the endurous conditions of African American lives, as Syme and Scott wrote. Thurman's Harlem Renaissance is thus staunch and revolutionary in its commitment to individuality and critical objectivity. The Black writer need not ponder to the aesthetic preferences of the Black middle class, nor should he or she write for an easy and patronizing white approval. All right. So check this out. It says during this time, Thurman's flat in a rooming house at 267 West 136th Street in Harlem became the central meeting place of African American literary avant-garde and visual artists. Thurman and Hurston markedly called the room Niggerati Minor. He had painted the walls red and black, which were the colors he used on the cover of Fire. Nugent painted murals on the walls, some of which contain homoerotic content. Okay. In 1928, Thurman was asked to edit a magazine called Harlem, a forum of Negro life. Its contributors included Allen Locke, George Schuyler, and Alice Dunbar Nelson. He put out only 2 issues. Afterward, Thurman became a reader for a major New York publishing company, the first African American to work in a such position. Langston Hughes described Thurman as a strangely brilliant black boy who had read everything and whose critical mind could find something wrong with everything he read. Thurman's dark skin color attracted comment, including negative reaction from both black and white Americans. He used such colorism in his writings, attacking the black community's preference for its lighter skinned members. Thurman wrote a play, Harlem, which debuted on Broadway in 1929 to mixed reviews. The same year, his first novel, The Blacker the Berry, a novel of Negro life, was published. The novel is now recognized as a groundbreaking work of fiction because of its focus on intra-racial prejudice and colorism within the black community, where lighter skin has historically been favored. 3 years later, Thurman published Infants of the Spring, a satire of the themes and the individuals of the Harlem Renaissance. He co-authored his final novel, The Intern, with Abraham L. Furman, a white man. So his personal life, Thurman married Louise Thompson on August 22nd, 1928. The marriage lasted only 6 months. Thompson said that Wallace was a homosexual and refused to admit it. They had no children together. Ooh. Excuse me. All right. So his death. Thurman died at the age of 32 from tuberculosis, which many suspect was exacerbated by his long fighting with alcoholism. All right. So down here, you could find out more information. All right. Here's the notes at the bottom. And here's the reference. And here's the external links. All right. All right, so that's his biography according to Wiki1. So let's look at the movement that he started, which is Niggerati. Okay. Hope y'all can see that. So, Niggerati. All right, and this can be found on Wiki1, which is Wikipedia, basically. All right, so the Niggerati was the name used with deliberate irony by Wallace Thurman for the group of young African Americans, artists, and intellectuals of the Harlem Renaissance. Niggerati is a portmanteau of nigger and Literati. The Roman house where he lived and where that group often met was similarly Christian Niggerati Minor. The group included Zora Neale Hurston and Langston Hughes and several other people behind Thurman's journal Fire, which lasted for 1 issue in 1926, such as Richard Bruce Nugent, the associate editor of the journal, Jonathan Davis, Gwendolyn Burnett, and Aaron Douglas. All right. So it says the African American bourgeoisie tried to distance itself from the slavery of the past and sought social equality and racial integration. The Niggerati themselves appeared to be relatively comfortable with their diversity of gender, skin, color, and background. After producing Fire, which failed because of a lack of funding, Thurman persuaded the Niggerati to produce another magazine, Harlem. This too lasted only a single issue. Okay. Then it goes on to say, in his autobiographical novel, Infants of the Spring, Thurman referred to the Harlem Literati, whose petitions he often considered to be sporadic and whose achievements he often considered to be secondary, as the Niggerati. In the novel, Sweetie Mae Carr a character model on the real life Hurston, crushed in the Harlem Rooming House, where Dr. Parks, modeled on the real life Alan Locke, established a salon of artists, Niggerati minor, just as Thurman's own rooming house was in real life. Thurman himself was infamous amongst the Literati. Although popular amongst the younger Bohemian crowd, Thurman rejected what he called society Negroes. He himself, as many others of as many others of the Literati did, would hold parties on Saturday nights, which Langston Hughes described in the Bit C by observing that at Wallace Thurman you met the Bohemians of both Harlem and the village. Recalling the days of Niggerati minor, Theophilus Lewis wrote, those were the days when Niggerati minor was the talk of the town. The story got out that the bathtubs in the house were always packed with sour mash, while gin flowed from all the water taps, and the flush boxes were filled with needle beard. It was said that the inmates of the house spent wild nights in tough hunting and in the diversion of the cities of the plains, and delirious days fleeing from pink elephants. Needless to say, the rumors were not wholly groundless. Where there is smoke, there must be fire. In the case of Niggerati minor, a great deal more smoke came out of the windows than was wanted by the size of the fire in the house. Okay. So then it goes on to say here, all three of Hughes, Hurston, and Thurman enjoyed the shock value of referring to themselves as Niggerati. Hurston's biographer, Valerie Board, described it as an inspired moniker that was simultaneously self-marketing and self-glorifying and sure to shock the stuffy black bourgeoisie. Hurston was actually the coiner of the name, the quickest wit in what was a very witty group which encompassed Helen Johnson, County Coolin, Augusta Savage, Dorothy West, then a teacher, Harold Jackman, and John P. Davis, a law student at the time, as well as hanger-on friends and acquaintances. Hurston doubled herself the rooming house at 267 West 136th Street, where both Thurman and Hughes lived. Niggerati meetings were held at Hurston's apartment with a pot on the stove into which attendees were expected to contribute ingredients for a stew. She also cooked okras or fried Florida eel. Whistle, Hughes, Hurston, and Thurman were comfortable with the appellation. Others were less so. Coolin, for example, found Carl Van Vichen's novel Nigger having so offensive that he refused to talk to him for 14 years. Hurston though had no trouble with language that challenged the sensibilities of others. She dubbed the well-heeled white liberals who were involved in the Harlem Renaissance as Nicotarians or Niggeratians. Okay. So basically, to sum it all up, right, these people were very more so liberated. So they were very liberated. So Wallace Thurman, Zora Neale Hurston, and Langston Hughes, they was like what the kids are today. The kids of today will be more into the how can I say, they would be more into like the little psychedelic stuff. Like they would be more, I don't know, these children today would be more like liberated, psychedelic type of thing. So that was kind of like them. I can't really give it a terminology for it, but that was Wallace Thurman. He was like one of those wild kids. He one of those kids that was like very so civilized and so conservative type. He was just like throwing up parties. He was very liberated. He was just, living his best life. You know what I'm saying? So You know what I mean? So they was getting into all kind of activities. They was getting into like drinking a lot, doing this and doing that. You know what I'm saying? As the young people would do today. So they will be what the youth are today, as more, psychedelic, more more rock star-ish party type. But back then they wouldn't call themselves rock star, because the genres that was popular then was blues and jazz. So, and, blues and jazz was considered as the devil music. So they were just more so like, they were just more liberated. They was more like party animals. They were not the conservative types, basically. I mean, just to put it in that manner, they weren't so conservative. They were just having private parties and shit like that. Hey, Santivo, how you doing? Thank you for coming through, brother. All right. So, fire itself represented the aesthetic frustration of Niggerati. A single issue was published in November of 1926, a year after the publication of Alan Locke's The New Negro. Whistle, the New Negro was viewed by the Niggerati as subtle propaganda, appropriating their talents for racial propagandist purpose. Fire was intended to be devoted to the younger Negro artists and was edited, paid for, and published by the Niggerati themselves, with the intention both of being purely aesthetic and of causing outrage amongst Black literary critics. The journal's title came from a poem that Hughes had written, which was a center lament in the fashion of a Negro spiritual. In a letter written to Locke, Hurston stated that there needed to be more outlets for Negro fire, and the Niggerati, distancing themselves even from Locke, declining his offer of patronage for the journal. So they felt like Alan Locke was too damn bougie. So they say Alan Locke was too damn bougie, he too damn conservative. We don't want to mess with you. So they kind of felt like he was coonish, without using the word coon, but that's what they kind of felt like about him. They felt like, well, dang, you trying to appeal to these white folks over here. We just trying to be just us. We just want to be the niggas. You know what I'm saying? I mean, let us be the niggas. You want to be so conservative. I mean, if you're going to be so conservative, shit, we don't need to be fucking with you, because then you got a hidden agenda. You know what I'm saying? You trying to get too mainstream with this. We just trying to just be who we are. We trying to express ourselves, because this is who we is. So they was like one of those rebellious youth. You know what I'm saying? He was very rebellious. They had that rebellious spirit. They weren't trying to deal with conservatism. That wasn't their thing. That wasn't their alley. All right, so um okay, so let's just go. Let me go ahead and read the organization. It says, addition to Nugent, Burnett, Douglas, and Truman, and Hurston and Hughes formed the journal's editorial board with Truman at the head. Davis was the business manager. Each editor was supposed to contribute $50 towards the publication costs, although only three, not including Hurston, actually did. Thurman signed an IOU for the printer, making him personally reliable for the bill of nearly $1,000. Damn. He borrowed $150 from the Harlem Community Church and another $150 from the Mutual League, only to be mugged on a street corner in Harlem, losing both all the money and his clothes for the next 4 years. Thurman's pay was attached in order to pay the debt. Hurston solicited subscription on a folklore collecting trip to the South in 1927 in order to help, and both she and Hughes submitted essays to World Tomorrow, which had loaned money to fire to repay that loan. So this shaky financial foundation was symptomatic of the trouble that beset the journal, one of the most major of which was that none of the Niggerati had time to work on it. By the autumn of 1926, Hurston had begun a course at Barnard. Hughes had returned to college in Pennsylvania. Davis was at Harvard and occupied with editing crisis. Burnett was at Howard and occupied with her own column for opportunity, and even Thurman had taken a new job editing World Tomorrow magazine. Nugent and Douglas were artists, not editors. One of Nugent's stories submitted for publication was Detroit accidentally whistle stored at Hurston's apartment, and he had to rewrite it. He did so on a roll of toilet paper, which he gave to Thurman. Nugent himself stated that the most amazing thing about Fire was that it was ever published at all. In a final irony, the printer gave the entire print run of the magazine to the Niggerati in the hope that they would sell better in quantity, only for several hundred copies to be lost in a fire in the basement in which they were stored. Hurston later commented, "I suppose that fire has gone to ashes quite, but I still think the idea is good." So pretty much he has lost all his words. So they lost all the works that was done in the fire, and they were not getting enough financial support to continue on with their magazine, which is called Fire. So everything was lost. But let's go ahead and continue. So let's go down to Harlem. So the Niggerati's next magazine, Harlem, was published in November 1928 and subtly different in tone to The Fire. Whistle still choosing themes that critics considered inappropriate and shocking. The magazine was more politically oriented and was more commercially viable and had a wider variety of articles, stories, advertisement, and other contents. It also had a different look and lacked the intergenerational rhetoric of Fire. Thurman himself described it as wholly new type of magazine with a new outlook celebrating a new day in history of the American Negro. Thurman aimed the magazine squarely at the new Negroes envisioned by Locke and others. Unlike Fire, Harlem was not intended solely a vehicle for the Niggerati themselves, but was intended to accept articles from anyone as long as the authors had skills. Okay. All right, and then goes on to say, the most of the editors of Fire also contribute to Harlem. They also approach other writers. One was Neela Larson, a friend of Pearson. Pearson had wanted no part in another magazine published by Thurman and had been approached by Nugent and Scully Alexander to write a monthly theoretical column under the pretext that Alexander was the editor. Upon receiving a thank you letter with Thurman's name as editor on the letterhead, she withdrew despite pleas from Alexander acknowledging Thurman's selfish treatment of those who have helped him gain a place in the literary world and stated that he would not let Thurman run amok. Alexander asked Pearson to ask her friends to forbear to withhold their criticism until they have the first issue at hand to criticize. Original emphasis and underline. Larson also declined on the grounds that she was not going to be paid for her submission, confessing that her ultimate goal in writing was money. I write so slowly and with such great reluctance that it seems a waste of time, she also observed. Hmm. All right. So let's go down to where it says the content. All right. So the first issue of Harlem contained essays by Louis Locke Nugent and Wallace Francis White, poems by Ellen Johnson, Georgia Douglas Johnson, Alice Dunbar Nelson, Effie Newton, stories by Roy De Gaulle and George Little, and illustration. Although intended to be more modern than Fire, Thurman abandoned this stance in later pages of the issue. His review of Larson's Quit Stand gave closer attention to the review of the novel given by Du Bois than it did to the novel itself, saying that Larson no doubt pleases Dr. Du Bois, for she stays in her own sphere and writes about the sort of people one can invite to one's home without losing one's social privilege. She doesn't give white people the impression that all Negro are gin drinkers, cabaret hounds, and of the half world. Her Negroes are all of the upper class, and how. Reception, like Fire, Harlem also fell, with the readership responding unfavorably. Nugent wrote to Pearson after the publication of the first issue, expressing his disappointment and blaming the failure of Wally's editorship. According to Nugent, neither Alexander nor Douglas had been able nor had the strength to counteract Truman. Nugent himself had been on tour with the cast of Porgy whilst the issues was being edited. Nugent distanced himself from the magazine and wanted it made clear to Van Vention that he had not been in any way responsible for the perpetration of Harlem. In December 1928, Thurman resigned from the magazine editorial board. All right. So, as you can see, with two magazines, Fire and Harlem, they both did not bring about success, because one did not receive enough financial support and the other one had received a lot of negative criticism. So when people get into the concept of writing or, doing any type of publication, right, it takes a lot of financial support to be able to put out your publication, for one. And then not only that, two, if you get a lot of criticism and a lot of misreviews about your stuff, then it's going to be hard for you to be able to get a good marketing, and not only a marketing, but also to make income. So with Thurman's original magazine, which was Fire, was pretty much of him expressing himself as the Negro that he was. But when he started Harlem, he had to kind of be a little bit more, he had to kind of wash it up a little bit, you know what I'm saying, and give it a more flavor and make it more appealing to the audience, to a wider audience. But when he tried to do that, that still did not, it was not as impressive. So, all of that comes along with the territory. It does. But that would lead to his depression of alcoholism, because he's like, okay, I'm not doing successful in my magazine. People walking out on me. My marriage done failed. What else do I have left? So he died at the age of 32, which is a very young age to die. At 32 years old. So yeah, he was going through a lot, But basically, the people of Harlem Renaissance, right? It's like they were just basically a bunch of young rebellious kids and young adults who just wanted to express themselves, who just wanted to get away from the narrative. They wanted to get away from oppression of the South, but they didn't want to. They didn't really fit into the bourgeoisie class, the upper class, the uppity Negro class. So they were just more like a bunch of liberated kids. They was kids with just a lot of arts, a lot of talents, and they brought that with them. Just like hip hop is the Renaissance. It's the modern version of Renaissance. Because why? Because you got different people that got different talent. So you got kids who create their own culture. They create their own idea. So hip hop became a culture because the music, the dance, the style of rap, the art, and of course the knowledge. So Harlem Renaissance kind of opened up the doors for things like hip hop, things like psychedelic music, um, and all these different themes, all the way on down to modern trap music, drill music, and shit like that. It kind of, the Harlem Renaissance opened up those doors of opportunity for young people to be more expressive, express themselves artistically, express themselves verbally. So they use their artistic gift as an expression, as a way to articulate things, especially when it came to political issues, when it came to social issues. So you're talking about kids who were outcast, young adults who were outcast, and they connected with each other and they found a common ground and they built with each other. One day I'm going to do a show about the gentleman from Queens, New York, I believe. I think he was from Queens, New York, or Bronx. His name was Jean Basquiat. That's his name, Jean Basquiat. So Basquiat was an artist from New York, very artistic man, very expressive. He did a lot of graffiti work. He used to draw on the trains. He used to draw on the walls and stuff like that. He had one artwork that was worth $50 million as of today. So he passed away at the age of 22 years old. Right? Very young, but he was very gifted and very talented. So one day I'm going to do a video about him. All right. But anyways, but let's go ahead and continue. All right, so I'm gonna skip some stuff. So I got some books that I would like people to look at so you guys can read on your own. All right, so this book right here, it's called Black of the Berry. That's the name of the book, Black of the Berry, by Wallace Truman. Wallace Thurman. So that's the title of the book. That was his main novel, the most popular one. All right, then he has a book right here, which is called Infant of the Spring. This one is called Infant of the Spring. And this book right here is called Collected Writings of Wallace Thurman, a Harlem Renaissance reader. All right. So, and then also I have an article here, which is called Wallace Thurman, a Western Renaissance Man by Gerald Haslam from the University of Nebraska Press, which was written in 1971, volume 6, number 1. And this is the last book right here. This one is called The Cambridge Companion to the Harlem Renaissance. So this book goes into the Harlem Renaissance in general. You guys can check that one out as well. All right, and that's it. So that's all I have for today. I appreciate those who were watching. I appreciate you guys supporting the channel, sharing my channel, liking my contents, and all of that. So until next time, I will connect with you all later. But you guys take it easy on yourself. May peace and power elevation be to all of you. This your girl Tiffany, and I'm logging off. All right.